Hello, Bob Van Rossum with Market Pro. We just completed a CMO search for about a $250, $300 million company, and pretty typical, right? High growth, got to 250 million in right around 6 years in business, and figured out that the head of marketing that got us from 50 million to 250, as good a job as they did, aren't really the person that's going to take us from 250 million to 2 billion. And so we need a new CMO. So we ended up completing the search and had a really good, successful process with them. But I got a call early in the search, probably a week and a half in, from the CEO, and he goes, "Hey, we really like your process. We really like your methodology. We really like how you guys work. The fact that you're just specific on senior level marketing roles, the fact that you're all former marketers by trade and training, the deep way you go through the interview and vetting process, how you focus on culture fit, everything about your process we were kind of bought in on as we interviewed you and for other search firms to choose from. Do you know anyone that does what you do for chief financial officers? We're also in the process of upgrading our CFO." And so I had to give that some thought, right? Because really off the top of my head, I didn't. And ultimately, after speaking to a few of my friends in the industry, we really weren't able to come up with a firm that we recommended for chief financial officers that does that process the way we do chief marketing officers. And that search, interestingly, was our 298th chief marketing officer search. And we've just recently completed now our 300th. So we've done this a little bit, but I said, "Hey, how about I send you some questions to ask as you're vetting search firms so you can make sure that you get the right firm to support you in your CFO search?" He's like, "Well, if you do that, that would be great." So I did. It took some time. I crafted a very detailed email to him and said, "Hey, here are all the things that you need to look for in your search partner." And he sent me a note back shortly thereafter saying, "This is fantastic. I'm so grateful that you guys did this. Really a lot of good information here. You should turn this into a blog post." So this video is really a result of that interaction in really helping corporations understand, hey, I'm going out to hire an executive search firm. I'm hiring an executive search firm because I need a senior leader within my organization that's really going to move us forward, and I'm willing to make the investment that it takes. So then what are some of the questions I should be asking? How do I vet an executive search firm to make sure we're getting the right partner? And at the end of the day, let's just start with how executive search firms work. So when you're talking about senior level roles, VP, C-suite level positions, and you're going out looking for a retained search firm, the way they process the work internally is pretty similar, right? You generally have a senior level person like myself who's in generally a partner role, and that person is going to be your day-to-day point of contact for the search and will manage each of the candidates through the process, handle salary negotiation at the end, and really is the lead on the search. Then you also have a senior associate, and a senior associate is a fancy way of saying a very senior level recruiter, and that person is going to be really the first point of contact for the majority of the candidates, and that person will do the first round of our interviews for all the candidates. And then in most firms you have a junior recruiter, and the junior recruiter is really doing research. They're really doing some initial candidate interaction. They may be asking a couple basic questions of candidates to see if they want to pass them on to the senior recruiter. And there's no right or wrong way in that. We choose not to use junior associates because I think that research process is critical to the ultimate success of the role. And so our partner level person and our senior associate level person split those duties. And we have found that leads us more quickly to a higher caliber shortlist, but it can be done well both ways, right? So that's kind of just how search firms work. So then the first question you've kind of got to ask is, the firm is not as important as the team that's going to be working your search, because you can get into one of the big 5 search firms, all of whom have very talented people, but those very talented people may or may not be assigned to your search, and you ultimately want to make sure that the people you're working with have the experience necessary to be successful. So in this case, it was a CFO search. In our world, it's the chief marketing officer search. but it doesn't really matter what the role is. The question is, for the people working your search, not the firm as a whole, how many similar searches have you conducted in the past 12 months, right? What examples can you give us of similar wins and similar successes? And when I say similar searches, I specifically mean if it's a chief financial officer search, chief financial officers, or if it's chief marketing officer search, chief marketing officers. It doesn't really matter industry. Industry is a very easy thing for a strong executive search person to adapt to. And the truth is, if we spend too much time working in one industry, it can cause you hands-off challenges. Right? So any good search firm is not going to recruit from their customers. And if you look at the biggest search firm in our industry, they work with 40% of the Fortune 500. So if you're working with them, you've fundamentally ruled out talent from 40% of the potential places you would pull somebody from. And so the industry experience can be a double-edged sword because ultimately it may limit who we can go after for our clients. Right? So some of the things that happen is it's like, who is going to be on my team, right? And how many similar projects, similar searches have they done historically? You've got to ask that question because sometimes in the larger firms or even medium-sized firms, they'll have a senior level person who's the partner that's selling the search. That may or may not be the person you work with once they assign the search out internally. So it's definitely something you want to ask about. Okay, so now as you're assessing the team that you're going to be working with and you have asked the question, how many similar searches have they done in the past 12 months that are relevant to the search that I'm getting ready to conduct? It's also important to understand what their expertise is before becoming an executive search professional. And so if you're looking for a chief financial officer and that's the role you're hiring, the person working your search should have experience in finance. They should understand that whole world because they've lived it. And that's really the only way they're going to be able to assess candidates as they interview them is if they have some expertise in the space. So for example, Market Pro, everyone on our team is a former marketer by trade and training, and we've taught them how to be executive search professionals. Where you see challenges relative to expertise in our industry is people who started in search right out of college and just worked their way up from one level in the organization to another, but have never fundamentally done anything within the space outside of the recruiting process itself. It's hard to get a high-level process and high-level expertise that way. So it's really important to understand, what expertise individuals have in my specific area I'm looking for, be it marketing, finance, operations, etc., that allows them to be able to vet and assess and compare one candidate to the next and really separate A players from everybody else, right? We like to say that marketers are good storytellers, which is true. And we as former marketers are good at separating fact from fiction. And ultimately, if the individuals that are going to be assigned to your search don't have a significant number of similar searches they've done recently, then you're going to be able to find better options out there. So that's kind of question one. Question two is then interview methodology. How do they go about separating top talent from everybody else that is out there? And there's more than one way to do this, right? But the fact that they have a methodology is important. And so you want to ask what that methodology is and who will be conducting those interviews. So I'll give you an example for the way we do it, right? The senior associate on our team does a first interview for all the senior level marketing talent that we look at. And that is a deep dive into their marketing background, right? So do they have the right marketing expertise and experience to be successful in this role? And we do that via a mix of custom questions that we create for every search. So for every search, we create a list of interview questions and use our experience in marketing and the fact that we've now done 300 CMO searches as part of that. We mix in some top grading questions. We really are big fans of the top grading interview methodology. And that's really a performance-based interview, that first interview. If they pass that, then they come to me, right? I'm now meeting them via Zoom, and ultimately we're going to be discussing leadership, we're going to be discussing culture fit as I validate a few of the marketing components that the senior associate on our team interviewed for. So what does all that mean, right? Then we've taken them through 2 deep dive interviews. How many candidates is it appropriate that we present versus we rule out? And what does that whole process look like? So for us, about 13% of the candidates that we interview get passed through to the client. That means 87% are ruled out. So the vast majority of the people that we talk to will not pass our grading process and be deemed an A player for you as our client. So if we're going to send you only the top 13%, right, and that's typically 7 or 8 candidates, and then you pick the top person that you like, you end up with basically the top 2% of talent out there that you've ultimately hired. So our job, though, is to make sure that you have a slate of candidates that are highly qualified and to make your decision as to who you hire very difficult. And it can't be done unless we have a very detailed vetting process on our end. And what you'll find is that some search firms won't interview that many candidates. They will more just interview enough candidates to get to a short list in a more, I'll just say, a quicker time frame. And it ultimately doesn't necessarily serve the client because you're not really going through enough candidates to make sure that you're getting the best possible candidates. And that's really what we want. We want to start with a research process that's about 150 to 175 candidates, get to about 70, 75 that we do a first round interview with, 20 to 25 we do a second round interview with to get you the top 7 or 8. And that's a very detailed process. But if the search firm is not ruling out 80% of the candidates they interview, then they're not really doing their job in making sure you get top talent and saving you time. So that question around what percentage of candidates pass the interview process is really important. One of the things that I think is most overlooked, right, when interviewing a search firm is now that I've assessed the team and I have the individuals that will be working on my account, how many other searches will they be working simultaneously? And one of the things that's really interesting to me is the average time it takes to complete an executive search in the United States of America is 6 months. And flip that from a Market Pro perspective, we're averaging 10 to 12 weeks. Why? Why are we averaging half the time of the industry, but yet at the end of the year, filling the same number of searches per employee as the other firms, if not more searches per employee than most firms? And that senior associate role that we talked about, right? They're going to do 75 on average interviews for you to make sure you're getting the best possible people. It's incredibly time consuming, right? To be able to get that many interviews scheduled, conducted, and completed takes a lot of time. And so for that reason, we only let the senior associate on our team work on a maximum of 2 searches at a time. And we try to make them different stages, meaning they're not both early stage searches. So with only 2 searches, you're able to effectively move through that process quickly. But most search firms, a senior associate may manage 4, 5, 6 searches at a time, which significantly slows down the process and significantly slows down, 1, how long it's going to take for you to see talent. 2, if they're off, how long it's going to take for them to course correct. And 3, ultimately, how long it's going to take to fill the position. So a really quick critical question is, how many searches is each individual on the team managing? The partner level person can manage a couple more and be fine as far as being able to move things quickly. But a senior associate with more than 2 searches, or whatever that firm calls them, the senior person who's doing the recruiting and the first round vetting and interviews, if they're managing 4 or 5 searches, you're going to have a slow process. So that next question is, how long does it take you on average to fill positions, right? Ultimately, as I said, the average is 6 months. And for an industry, for us as a firm, it's 10 to 12 weeks. And it's very possible for everybody to be doing it in 10 to 12 weeks if you put the right level of resources behind it. But for us, first week is research. We'll start reaching out to candidates. Weeks 2 through 6, we're in all those interviews that we talked about. Weeks 4, 5, and 6, we're presenting you with our short list of candidates. And so that's what we commit to, right? So far this year, it's December of 2024, every search we've done, we've started presenting candidates by week 3. And as I said, we just completed our 300th CMO search, and we were able to do that one in 47 days. So a little under 6 weeks for the complete search, or right around 6 weeks for the complete search. And that is, let me check my math, so right about 7 weeks for the complete search. And that's incredibly fast, right? We also had a very motivated client, and a client that moved through their interview process in a very fast and methodical way. And so we were able to go from the time that we took the search to signed offer letter in 47 days. Now, the other thing you want to ask about is fees, right? How are your fees structured, and how does that work? Ultimately, any good firm that you're going to go with is going to ask you for a retainer, because the amount of time it takes us to go through all those interviews, if you're trying to do this on a contingency basis, which we would see on more junior level searches, contingency search is generally first available talent, not best possible talent. So if you're really doing a senior search, you should go with a retained search firm. And a lot of times what you'll see is a non-performance based agreement, which I would advise you to stay away from. So a non-performance based agreement will look something like this. Pay me a third up front, pay me a third after 45 days, and a third after 90 days, whether or not we've actually gotten you any results. And then we'll true up at the end the amount that you may owe us or we may owe you relative to where the actual salary and bonus compensation came in. So most executive search firms charge a third or 33% of the first year salary and first year bonus. And so that is a risky agreement for you as the client. So we do it a little differently. We're actually slightly lower than the 33%. But ultimately, that's not the point. The point is we charge a third up front. We charge a third after you start interviewing. So you agree that we're sending you the right candidates and you want to meet them. And then our final third is not due until you hire somebody. And so that invoice goes out on their start date. So what we want to do with our agreement, and what you want to look for in agreement with an executive search firm, is that it's structured in a way that aligns you as partners in the right outcome, which is finding somebody very talented. And then you're able to make sure that the parties are aligned, right, on the financial structure leading to results. You don't want to have something that's a financial structure where you end up paying a search firm and they may or may not be motivated to serve your best interest.